I'm Bre. It's nice to meet you. I see you in all of the groups. I know there's so much talk about this right now. Clubhouse and Facebook are crazy with Vella. And I think you're probably getting inundated with questions that are about format and best practices and things like that. But I'm hoping to see the other piece of that. So the craft of a serial, more of what do readers respond to with how serials work. My thinking, or what I've been telling myself as someone who's never written serialized fiction but is super intrigued by it, so I'm more familiar with the novel structure.
Of course.
I've been telling myself this is like an episode of Law and Order. They got these long seasons, but they have individual episodes, and then they even have multiple seasons. So they have and they even have spin-offs like other Law and Orders. So that's how my brain has been thinking of this.
That's one of a few options. So the first thing I want to say is, and what's driving me a little batty in all the groups is, this is serial fiction. I write novels as well. I love novels. And sure, on Radish, every now and then, when I was on Radish, I would put my best up and break it down, but that's not a serial book. That's not how my serial made six figures. You have two options with serial fiction. So you can do a Law and Order type show where at the end of each episode you have resolved that arc, right? So yes, you may have the characters like the cops or whoever, like in an overall type of thing, but that's also similar to an ER type arc, right? Where we have the issue of the medicine or the issue of the crime, and then we resolve that. So that's one way to write serial fiction. The other way to write serial fiction, which I have done, is like a Homeland type arc where you have an arc over the season, you still have episodes. And so that's the way I've done it. So either of these are acceptable, and I'll go back to that in a second. What is not acceptable, when you take a book and you chop out chapters, that is going to frustrate your readers. And I've had talks with the Kindle Vella team. They reached out to me for my feedback because I've been successful on these platforms. And do not chop up your book. Like, you can if you want to, and some people do it, but that's not really fair to the reader, because that's just, again, a book chopped up. So when I write a serial, I consider it a television series. I was actually obsessed with Homeland, and I thought of seasons. So I have 3 main seasons, and it is also a romance. So it's like a really twisted mystery thriller like thing, but I had an overall arc for that season. So that season was 60 episodes. So that's 62,000 word episodes. So 120,000 words. And at the end of that season, I had a happily ever after for that couple. But then I had major cliffhangers, and then I had each episode, because again, I wrote this before it was Vella. So I did 15,000 to 25,000 word novellas. So each chapter was a scene in my show, and each episode would be like an hour television episode. And then I had 7 television type episodes make up a season. The television structure is a great way to think of it. Just don't chop up your book. And you're like, well, some people do. I'm like, that's great. That's not serial fiction. It's different for serial fiction. Think Netflix for books, right?
I love how you said Netflix for books. That resonates. I think the binge factor is what they're going for.
But a serial is different. A serial, you're waiting in line at the doctor's appointment. You're waiting. They're short things. So it should be like a different type of experience, like just this kind of short thing versus like, I really want to get, because as you said, you write books, and some books, read it. If you're setting up this amazing scene and then I'm like, boom, you're out. You're like, okay, that's super unsatisfying. Not that your book is unsatisfying, but that sliver of your book would not be satisfying because that's not how it was structured. So it's the structure of the serial is completely different than the novel.
So in speaking of structure, do you outline when you write?
Yes, 100%. And I'm totally psycho on my outlines. Now, I never used to. I used to be a pantser. I am a recovered pantser. It took years. So before I wrote the first word, I knew exactly what was going to happen at the end of the series. And from day one, I write romance. I do my beats. I'm obsessed with Gwen Hayes. I do not do that for my serial. For my serial, I know the end game. I know my beginning. Then I know the series end game, season end games. So those are the 2 main things. Then in each season, I have my 6 main cliffhangers. There's 7 episodes, so 6, and then the end of the season. And so I know that. And then I write to it. I write to each cliff. The cliffs are similar to your major plot points in terms of the romance arc in there. So I try to mess up the couple appropriately with all their black moments and their little happy and their little moments thing. And then I also try to do a real plot structure of inciting incident and pinch points and plot points and all that kind of stuff. So I do that. But none of that matters if I plot to the cliffs. The only reason you're going to get these people to read your book is just kill them with these cliffs. And when I write my romance novels, I don't care about cliffs. So like, I'm like trying to work on something else. But this, I want to mess you up so bad that you have to buy that next episode. I'm on a cliff right now. I think we're on season 2 of it'll be on Kindle Vella. I pulled it from Radish to put it exclusively there. And the cliff is awful. Like, it's just the worst. And I've left my poor readers like on it for a year, and I'm gonna torture them a little longer, but it's all about the cliffs.
I saw in a group that you said for Vella, and maybe this is how you do it for Radish too. Maybe they're the same, or maybe you have a different perspective on each, but you're doing like around 1,500 words, 1 to 2 times a week is your kind of thought process with the release. Are you doing the same thing for Vella and Radish?
Oh yeah. Okay. So I'm no longer in Radish, but yeah, there's 2 different ways. So when I was releasing daily on Radish, I made so much money. And the reason was because I was releasing daily. So that's great. And that's a great option for a ton of people. However, this is a television show, right? And so what happens is your income is like all the way here, and then your income completely drops. So because I was the number 2 at that time, we realized that was probably at that point, I had 95 episodes. So that was really cool for 3 months, and I made a ton of money. So a lot of people might be very tempted to do that. But the key with the serial, and this is where I failed. And so the most important thing that I teach in my course, that I try to also tell in all these groups, is that you need to maintain reader expectations. So this is the biggest failure in my entire career, not just I write books and I don't release the next one. So this is kind of like my own personal thing. Again, do as I say, not as I do. But what happened is I had all these people were used to this daily thing, and then I gave them nothing for 6 months. That was really not okay. I would have made more income and a more stable income. And we traced this with Radish data based on their number 1 is if I had done Tuesday and Saturday, and I had maintained that. With the amount of episodes I have, I could have maintained that for 2 or 3 years. And so then you get that reader expectation that, hey, every Tuesday, every Saturday, you're getting this episode, versus binging and then stop. But I don't want to slam the way anyone releases. You can make a lot of revenue and release daily, but then you can't. And now in my situation, I'm traditionally published and I'm not allowed to release when I want to. So to get my remaining episodes in my window, I may release daily because I'm then not allowed to, but I don't want people to be like, see, she released daily, made a lot of money, so that's what we should do. If I was free, I would release Tuesday and Saturday. That's what I believe is the best way to continue and keep this great income and keep it steady, and not do this and then make nothing.
When we're talking about the Netflix strategy, it's always frustrating whenever you get to the end of something and you look up the release date and it's 2 years away, and you're like, no, I'm not. You're mad about it.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, and so I watched Cobra Kai on YouTube Red. Like, I bought YouTube Red. I bought it for Cobra Kai. And everyone was so excited when it finally came to Netflix. I'm like, I've been waiting season 3 for 2 years, people. Like, I was so angry. And then you watch it and you're so excited, and then it's over. You love these characters. Now, I would have rather from day 1, you had 2 episodes a week, and then they just don't leave you hanging. And that's fine to take like a season break, maybe a couple, kind of like that winter season, fall season that TV does. You do lose that interest, and you do go on to the next big thing, and you might not get those readers back. So again, if I could go back, I would have done Tuesday and Saturday forever.
So you said a mistake that you made in your career was not setting that up. Are there any other things that you've tried with the serialized fiction, craft-wise possibly, that didn't work? You're like, oh, that wasn't what I was hoping for.
No, actually, my serial's been really incredibly successful. And I don't know why. I think the serial to me gave me freedom, and I'm hoping Vella does this. So basically, I would write these huge books. So it was number 3 in the paid store, and then I had a bunch of top 100 books, and the intelligent author would be to write the next book. Everyone loves it. But to me, the serial was this freedom, right? So I would write this book and it would do really well. And a book just takes so much out of me. And then I would write an episode, which in my mind was 15,000 to 25,000 words. And it was like this complete freedom of the structure and embracing this kind of television thing. I didn't know what I was doing, and I just lucked down. I was just studying serial. I didn't even know anything about serial fiction, but I was studying television structure. And so I didn't actually make a mistake. So what I messed up is this release schedule and everything. But in terms of writing, 2 million other bad things and other things. But in the serial, luckily, no, because this was just kind of my passion project, and that I literally never thought anyone would buy. And it was actually a totally dumb decision of mine to be writing this when I had books that did well, because nobody wanted to read these.
And sometimes that's the best things that you can just do.
Like I would do all this stuff. I would have teasers. I would post this. I would just be like, I'm going to just finish it and press publish and send to my, like, I did nothing on it. I didn't care. And it built a following. The best thing you can do for this is these heavy clips, and you will get reviews on Vella, or if you eventually release it. And to be very clear, if it's on Vella, has to be new stuff. It can't be already done. But if Vella, or if eventually you release it on Amazon, you will get hate mail. You will get people who are so angry, calling you that you're greedy for splitting up your book, even though this isn't a split up book. You just got to take it. They're still buying, and it's a different readership. And I wish, and I repackaged these into books for people who read novels, the ones that have already been released. I bundled 3 together and did a weird edit of it, but yeah, it's just a different structure.
So whenever you talk about cliffhanger and how you do it, what constitutes a cliffhanger for you? What does that actually look like? How much of a cliff are we talking about?
So cliff, like you're going to jump off. Yeah. So for each one of mine, the biggest cliffs for me are at the end of kind of the TV episode for me, which is at 15 to 25,000 words. And then I have mini cliffs in between for the end of each scene. But those cliffs for me are brutal. So I don't want to give spoilers away from mine, but just like major, either emotional character reveals, major where you think something that it's not, major completely mind screwing my audience. Like whatever my full thing is whatever you think is happening in my serial and you're sure about, you're wrong. And that's my cliff. And so I'm going to mess with you badly.
A little bit of mystery. It sounds like you like.
Well, mine. Yeah, it's like a mystery thriller romance. Regardless of each one, I want to give you an emotional gut punch, and I want you to question anything, and then I want you to end up rereading everything for clues.
You said you have like some mini cliffhangers in between. Well, what's an example of a mini cliffhanger?
Number one, to write a good cliffhanger, you want to end on the rising action, not the falling action. So you don't want to say what the cliffhanger is. So like a major doubt. So basically someone isn't who they say they are. So that's like a major cliffhanger. A mini cliffhanger is discovering something or discovering a clue that's leading you to that conclusion, or messing up with a clue that you thought you knew. So it all like goes to it. So it's like that mini step.
Okay. So then once you drop a cliffhanger, how quickly do you resolve that in your next episode or your next season, however that works?
Oh, I always resolve it in the next episode. And that's one of the things I learned. So number one, I always do it. But again, I'm evil, so that these poor readers have waited a year for that next thing. But when it comes out, you're getting that answer. Again, I've left them on one for 2 years. So like hate mail is real. That's fine to mess with your audience, but you have to resolve all these loose ends. So whatever you've promised them in this, you have to deliver. And that's where I find serial writers completely fail, is you're not delivering on this. Yes, you want to keep them. I've read books where they drop something and then they don't resolve it. And I'm livid, because that is the payoff that I expect. Just if I read a romance, the couple they better get together at the end. If I'm reading a mystery, I need to solve the crime. And if you're not giving me that, I'm out. I'm done. Don't mess with me as a reader. So I always give them what they want, and then I'll screw with them again.
I don't write romance, but I read romance. And I always love the conversations that I see romance authors specifically having about happy endings and couples getting together. It's like the angriest conversation ever.
Crazy. Yeah. Romance, if they don't end up together, oh my gosh, pray for you. Like they will come for you. We don't mess around with that.
So you're making my brain think of a lot of things. But another thing I keep seeing in the groups of people talk about like web serials. So a little bit different than what Vella will look like. And those can go on forever. When you think of something like working in Vella, working in Radish, maybe not Wattpad because it's a little bit more web serialized, but maybe. Do you think that serials have to wrap up? Like, does there have to be an end?
Yes. Absolutely. I think that there's too much of a good thing. You can do a spin-off, and I just think it gets tired. It's like your TV show. To me, the best TV shows have a start and an end, and that they're allowed to complete it. Two things I absolutely hate. My husband always he mentions this one show he watched called Southland, which he absolutely loved, and they were supposed to do another season and they didn't. And so he's left on a cliffhanger, and he will still mention it to this day. So that to me is the worst thing you can do without an ending, which is what I'm currently doing to my readers, but I'm going to finish it, I promise. The other thing I think is the worst is this never ending thing that just ends. And I don't want to be trapped inside something for the rest of my life as a reader or as a writer, and I want resolution. I think we crave resolution, especially in this time of uncertainty or whatever. So yes, the people are going to write those, and that's great. But to me, maybe it's my weird story structure thing, but I like endings. Yeah.
How long can a serial sustain itself, from your opinion?
I think it needs to be fresh. Mine, for instance, is 3 seasons of 120,000 words. And I mean, it's long, like that's long. Yeah. And that would be very expensive to buy on Vella.
Do you have any predictions? Like how for Vella? Do you have any thoughts?
Vella is going to be the biggest thing ever. Vella I've talked about this a lot. Radish just got bought up, and so did Wattpad, and they have these huge deals. And I met the CEO of Radish several times, and that was always his end game. But in my opinion, I didn't feel like they understood structure or algorithm or any of the things. Amazon is a game changer. Amazon knows what you read. They know what you buy. They literally know everything about you. They know more about you than you know about you. And so Amazon is going to kill this, and whoever gets in on it they're going to promote it. This is going to be their baby, and it's going to be game changing. So all the people who serials don't work in this format. My thing would be serials haven't worked in this format, but that's because maybe Radish didn't put them up, or Wattpad's younger or whatever. But that doesn't mean serials are the old. Dickens wrote, serials are the oldest form. Serials rock. It's going to be huge.
Yeah, serials are like some of the first serials were the first mainstream fiction.
You got your Saturday newspaper and you read the next Dickens thing, and you could not wait. We didn't have TV. They didn't even have radio shows back then. Like, it was serial fiction. I'm all about the serial fiction. So to me, this is the next coming of serial fiction.
So it sounds like you read a lot of serial fiction too. What is the serial fiction that you really love? What about it do you love that you read?
I like the format. I like that it's fast when I don't have to read a novel. And I just like good serial fiction. I shouldn't be able to predict the end. And no matter whether it's romance or not, but I just like being kept on my toes. Now, I love the structure of a novel, but if I read a novel, I'm going into a different mindset of what I'm going to read and how I'm going to feel and whatever. And I just kind of like the short, punchy things. But for me, my serial fiction is mainly because I like television arcs, and I'm getting executive producing and will be in the writer's room on my television show. And that's kind of how I got into it, from a desire to get into screenwriting.
I know that you have the class on serial fiction on your website. Are there other resources for maybe authors like me who are familiar, or just anybody who are not familiar with serialized fiction, that would be a good place to start so that they don't make chop the novel up mistakes?
Again, yeah, I have my class. I haven't really seen good books about it. Some people said they found a really good, I think it was like a webtoon book about it, but to me that wasn't really relevant for serial fiction. So unfortunately, because it's newer, I haven't seen that many. And I'm not just saying that to promote my class. Like, I just really haven't. I will be doing a serial fiction webinar, which will be free, and full disclosure, I'll try to sell my class at the end. But what is serial fiction? I could give you 1,000 resources for writing romance, writing mystery, or whatever, but no, I just haven't seen that many.
And when they asked me to write this article, I was like, yes, but I only know 2 places to get the information, and that's the Vella Facebook group and the Clubhouse Vella groups. So I'm like, that's it. Yeah. Like, there's not a lot more. I could go look at the platforms, but I'm going to get stats and I'm going to get stories. I'm not going to get the craft side of it. So it's been interesting doing the research.
Yeah, and I think it's lovely what's happened with Vella and the Clubhouse, but just this is my advice with everyone, with anyone who's talking about it or being experts in it or whatever. And that's great. It's just verify that they've written it. And a lot of people say, oh, Radish, a lot of people, and I did the same thing. So I'm totally like, 7 Deadly Sales is a true serial. I also put up my backlist books and chopped them up, and I also made money on them. Okay. But those were not serials. And a lot of times you see people like, oh, well, I did this and I made a lot of money on Radish, but if they didn't write serial fiction, that's great and all. And I'm so happy they made money. And to me, that's a different way to monetize your backlist, which is wonderful. But that is not writing serial fiction. So one of my best friends is Tamara Lesh, and she's also written a true serial, and she's a Wattpad star. And we met on Radish because I was number 2, she was number 3. She's like the best thing ever. So she's also written serial fiction. So it's very careful that when people, and the other guy who I said it was the crime one, A.C. Fuller, he writes serial fiction. He's incredible. And again, that's not romance, another thing. And there's some incredible people who write serial fiction. But all of this, when people are taking advice, they need to make sure that they're looking at serial fiction and not chopped up books.
Yeah. One thing I have noticed in the groups too, just my own perspective, is I differentiate between the web webcomic serials and the serialized fiction. I think there's different. As someone who has seen a lot of the webcomics, I just don't feel like there's the same type of structure to that stuff. So I think it's just going to be really interesting to see what goes up on Vella. Like that to me is super interesting, is to see what Vella looks like.
I think, and I'm wondering how they're going to promote it. And I'm already feel so behind on like, but I'm absolutely going, how are they going to promote? Who are they going to promote? And is it going to pop up on my Amazon thing? Like when I buy something, is it going to pop up? Is it going to be in a like separate, like all this
Kindle
stuff?
adder.
So I'm going to change a lot of these suggestion predictions once we have data. Like at least I can look at Radish and Wattpad and say, this is what happens. This is how you do it. But Vella, I feel like I'm happy to talk about serial fiction. And I've had 2 conversations with the Vella rep, but it's not out. So we're all just like guessing. And so I think anyone needs to be very careful of some like hard, fast things, because I can tell you 100% worked on Radish, what works on Wattpad, but we don't even know what Vella looks like for me to say I'm this expert on it. Like that would just feel I know nothing. So
yeah, nobody's an expert on Vella yet. Like not even Amazon.
It's not out. You know, they aren't. They were like asking me, what do you think we should do here? You've done a lot of stuff. And I'm like, you're asking me, I don't know anything. Like, but I gave them some very strong ideas because they were talking about reviews. And I'm like, you cannot have reviews on the episodes. You can't. You can have comments. And that's a great experience. So one of the things Radish did, that they finally got comments. But one of the best things about Wattpad was we always had comments, right? So Wattpad, we would get this absolutely incredible interactive experience. And some of those comments shaped the way I wrote it. Like I had a cliff and then someone wrote this comment and I was like, oh my gosh, that is what I needed. It was like that. And it was such an incredible interactive experience, and you bond with your fans. That experience is incredible, but leaving reviews on a serial episode, not a good idea. I think that's an absolutely horrible idea. I don't think they're going to do that. So it's so interesting how it's going to be, the comments, the reactions, the lives, like what are they going to do with it? I can't wait.
I'm super interested. I don't, like I said, I don't write romance. So the idea of putting fantasy or something into it I'm curious to see what that's going to look like with their algorithms, exactly what you said, how it's promoted, what that looks like.
I think it'll be incredible. And my line that I keep saying over and over again is, you don't know. You 100% do not know. It could be huge. It could blow up. I have full on faith in Amazon that they will find. And to me, fantasy is a perfect match for serials. To me, paranormal, like pure fantasy or whatever, pure sci-fi. Has it done well in serial fiction? No, but the apps weren't taking it. Like you could have been the best writer ever. Sky's the limit. Go for it. But to me, it's gonna, I always think KU1, you get it now and you make all the money. And then I don't know, in 2 years, it could be saturated once people figure this all out. But right now we're all clueless, and all these groups, like everyone can give this great advice, but we do not know. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try. We'll see how it goes, just for fun.
Yeah, I mean, that Vella rep told me 10 episodes up. You want to be able to launch with content. And then, so what I'm doing, because my book is released and I cannot do it, and I will never violate Amazon guidelines because that's my worst nightmare. I'm allowed to put my first episode up free, and that's allowed within that 5,000 content limit. And that episode's 2,000 words. And immediately under, I say, this has been previously released. You can read the entire series in KU. That series has never been in KU, but I took it off everywhere. It's always been wide just for the Vella launch. It's in 4 books, though I think I'm directing to a box out. And then I'm putting all new content only on Vella. So that's how I'm launching it.
Have you gotten a sense from talking to Amazon, like when they're thinking of launching?
They said hopefully by summer. I've been saying hot serial summer. I'm hoping to launch it in summer. And I know, again, I'm under this deadline and doing all this stuff. The literal second I can breathe, I'm only doing serials. Like I want to go away and just do serials. I have another one that I want to launch too, but I need to get it into my publishing contract because I'm not allowed to do anything. The best thing that I want to say about the serial thing is that if I didn't write serials, the serial has been the best experience of my life. So writing the 7 Deadly Seals serial absolutely changed my life. And it wasn't the book that, I thought would be the one that changed my life. And so because of that, I applied to a Hedgebrook masterclass in screenwriting with the showrunner of Homeland, Meredith Stein, and the showrunner of CSI, Lisa Zierwing, and best experience of my life. All women. We went to Whidbey, Washington, this island. They take your cell phone. They called it a retreat. I called it a rehab. I thought I was going to die out there. I had to make my own fire. Like it was crazy, but we went 101. And then I wrote the pilot for that show. And though that one's still negotiation because of that experience, when my traditional book, Ramona and Julieta, that one got bought by Berkeley, but when that one went to auction and film rights, and we had 4 offers, 2 film, 2 TV, but because I had screenwriting experience, which I wouldn't have had without my serial. I am now in the writer's room and we have a showrunner attached. And because of this, I will now be writing my own television show. Okay.
That's awesome.
So to me, sky is the limit. Now, none of this would have ever happened if I didn't want to watch this stupid serial that nobody was going to buy that was totally off brand for me. So it changed the way I write. I learned so much about craft and structure in terms of, and in my course, what I go over is like television structure and dialogue and all that kind of stuff. And I did all of that because of serial fiction. So it definitely challenged me as a writer and also made me learn how to write on a deadline when I was writing daily. Like the episode had to be published and I had to write it. So that was good.
I think you touched on something that important. Like one thing that seems to be a character trait across successful indies and certainly other trad pub is adaptability. So like you certainly adapted to opportunities that were presented to you and made something different than you thought, but certainly something awesome.
I'm in a trad group with a bunch of the trad authors now for Berkeley, and they're all wonderful and they're all incredible writers. And one of the things that I keep stressing is the kind of the thing about indie is the people who are indie cut their teeth and they market and they have to adapt. And the trad writers are incredible. Their level of craft, I read some of their stuff and I'm like, it's just so good. You know what I mean? And now that I'm in the trad process, I think I said, I opened the thing, I'm on my third round of edits. Like I've never done 3 rounds of edits on a book. I love my editor. It's killing me, like 3rd round of edits. So total mad respect for trad. I never did that indie. However, the way, not just that forget all the marketing and all that kind of stuff, but the way that we can be like, hey, Vella is adapting and we are going to write it and we are going to figure this out and we're going to do it. Or, hey, there's a serial opportunity and it, to me, it's so innovative. And I begged to get a trad deal for this and no one would even look at this book. They were like, no one writes serials. Hello, I've made 6 figures off it. I have TV, like of all of my books that they should have bought, this is the book they should have bought. Like this book is actually, I've made more money on this book than anything. And they wouldn't look at it. I don't even mean like they read it and they said, hey, this sucks. Like that's fine. I can totally handle a rejection. Like they were like, we don't buy serials. And I'm like, well, you maybe really should because I'm offering you like you would have taken half my money. And I'm hoping that this will, open it up, but forget them. We can just stay indie.
I mean, we make
anyway. I love it. I will always be indie. I'm now hybrid, and my heart's still indie. My trad is amazing, but it's just they sent me cover, and I actually love it. But it's so weird to me. I'm like, so I had this idea. I want to write a prequel novella and make it, and they're just like, you want to do what? Like, and I'm like, this is how we're marketing. This is the Facebook ads, and where are the Amazons? And they're like, who are you? I'm like, what's our plan? Like, I just can't. Like my book's not even coming out till next February and it's done. And I'm like, I can't just hit publish. Like it's painful as an indie to go try. They're all wonderful, but wonderful team, amazing. The lack of control. It's weird.
It's funny that you say my book's not out until next year. Like for an indie, if I have a pre-order that's 60 days out, I'm like, should I move that up? If I'm done, I'm like, I should move that up.
And it's done. And I keep talking about it. And my indie fans are like, why are you delayed the pre-order? And they won't let me release it. I'm like, I can't just get drunk and hit publish. This is not my, and it's killing me. It's literally killing me. I'm like, I have a fully done 80,000 word book that's like in my head. Like they know, I'm not even allowed to release the cover. It's just like totally foreign for me. And then I'm like, I keep talking about the characters and they're like, dude, shut up. Like your book's not out. They're like, where's the next book? And that's the other thing I'm not allowed to release. And no one gets, like my poor indie fans, they're just like, they read indie books. So they're like, where is this book? And I'm like, I promise you it's written. And the second I'm allowed to publish it, I will. But they're just like, they think I'm like lying. I'm like, no, literally, like they don't get it, right? They're like, oh, so you haven't finished the book? I'm like, dude, it's done. It's edited. It's sitting there in draft waiting to be. I think I'm allowed to release next July because I have like a window of 3 months before and 3 after, and I can't release before. And I have 30, like I might release a book a day. Like all these, what is wrong with her? Does she know anything about marketing? But I'm only allowed to release that month. So I might literally be like, Monday you have a book, Tuesday you have a book, Wednesday you got a book, you got a book. They're gonna be like, what is this author doing? And then I won't release again for a year because I'm not allowed to. So that's why I really want to say with all the serial stuff, also same with Vella, because I don't know how I can release it. Don't look at me as what to do because I'm not allowed to do what I would actually do. So like, I am happy to tell everybody, this is what, in my opinion, is the best thing, but do as I say, not as I do.
Thank you so much again for talking to me. Super appreciate it.
Wonderful. I'm excited. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.